They say the market humbles every man, but humility wasn't something I learned easily. I had to lose everything again and again before I understood what the market had been whispering all along. You see, my greatest loss wasn't the money. It was the blindness that came from success, the illusion that I had conquered the market, when in truth, the market had simply allowed me to win. When you make your first fortune, it feels like genius. When you make your second, it feels like destiny. And when you lose it all, it feels like the end of the world. But the market never ends. Only the man does. It was 1934, and I was no longer the young boy plunger who broke bucket shops and cornered cotton. I had been a king once. Men whispered my name on Wall Street floors. Reporters waited at my office doors, and traders followed my moves like scripture. But success, my friend, is a dangerous companion. It teaches you the wrong lessons when you're not paying attention. I had survived the panic of 1907. I had made millions shorting the market in 1929 when the world collapsed. And that victory, oh, that victory, was the poison. Because after that, I began to believe the rules no longer applied to me. Every trader faces this moment, that whisper that says, "You've cracked it. You can't lose anymore." That whisper is the beginning of the end. The irony was, the same rules that built my fortune were the ones I stopped following. I used to say, never average losses. Always wait for the market to confirm your judgment. Always follow your rules. But in those years I began to think, maybe this time is different. Maybe I can outsmart the tape. That's how ruin begins. Not with bad trades, but with good men thinking the rules don't matter. And so I started trading size, recklessly, arrogantly. I took positions not because the market told me to, but because my pride demanded I be right. The market has no mercy for pride. I watched my fortune evaporate trade by trade, tick by tick. It wasn't one loss. It was a slow bleeding. A man can recover from a wound, but not from bleeding he refuses to see. My mind was clouded. I had lost the rhythm, that quiet pulse of the market that once spoke to me. Instead of listening, I shouted. Instead of waiting, I forced the move, and the market punished me, not out of cruelty, but precision. That was my greatest loss. Not the millions gone, but the clarity that had built them. I remember the days leading to my downfall like a fever dream, each one blurred with hope, fear, and a kind of defiance that only a desperate man can feel. The tickers still clattered. The clerks still shouted prices. But to me, the sound had changed. It wasn't music anymore. It was noise. Chaotic, meaningless noise. The same tape I once read with perfect fluency now mocked me with every tick. I would stare at it for hours trying to find the pattern, the pulse, the old rhythm I used to trust. But it wasn't there, not because it disappeared, but because I had drowned it out with ego. You see, when you've been right for too long, you stop listening. You stop doubting. And in this game, doubt is not weakness. It's survival. I used to feel the market move before it moved. A slight tremor in price, a pause in volume. It told me what was coming. It wasn't guessing. It was listening. But somewhere along the way I stopped hearing it. And then one morning, I remember it vividly, I made a call that went against everything I knew. The tape was clear. The trend was down. But I told myself, it's overdone. It'll bounce. It has to. That phrase, "it has to," has ruined more traders than any other. Nothing in the market has to do anything. When you reach that point, you're no longer trading. You're praying, and the market doesn't answer prayers. The days that followed were brutal. Every attempt to fix my position only made the wound deeper. I averaged losses, ignored stops, and justified it all under the guise of patience. But patience without reason is delusion. Every ticker print was a cut. Every headline felt like a mockery, and as the numbers bled red across my books, something inside me began to fracture. At night, I would walk the quiet streets of Manhattan, alone, coat pulled tight against the wind. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement, reflections of a world still moving forward while I stood still. I'd look up at the tall buildings, the very ones that once echoed my name, and I'd think, how does a man lose everything he was sure he'd mastered? The answer came slowly, cruelly. You don't lose it all at once. You lose it by inches, by compromise, by convincing yourself that one small break from discipline won't matter, that you can bend the rules just this once and still win. But the market keeps score. It always keeps score. Every bad habit you let slide, every emotion you ignore, it writes it down in ink. And one day when you least expect it, the market hands you the bill. That was my bill, and it was long overdue. The calls stopped coming. The papers stopped writing. The men who once begged for my advice now avoided my gaze. Reputation, I learned, vanishes faster than capital. I sat alone in my office, the blinds drawn, the sound of the ticker echoing like a clock counting down my final hour. There's a kind of silence that follows failure. It's not peaceful. It's suffocating. It fills the room with everything you wish you'd done differently. I remember holding one of my old trading journals, pages filled with the very wisdom I had ignored. Every rule, every lesson, every warning, it was all there in my own handwriting. And yet, I had traded like a stranger to myself. That's when I realized the truth every trader eventually faces. You don't lose to the market. You lose to the man in the mirror. All those years, I thought I was fighting other traders, other minds, other strategies. But the battle was always internal. The enemy was pride. The weapon was emotion. And the battleground was discipline. When the end finally came, it didn't come with a crash or a headline. It came quietly, an account empty, a name tarnished, a man broken. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just emptiness. It's strange, isn't it? How silence can be louder than applause. How failure, when it finally arrives, feels like relief. That night, I looked in the mirror and saw not the legend they once wrote about, but a man stripped bare of illusion. And for the first time in years, I could finally see again. That was my greatest loss. Not the money, though the figures would make most men tremble. Not the reputation, though it stung to watch it vanish. My greatest loss was clarity. The clarity that once guided me through chaos, that once turned fear into patience, and patience into profit. The clarity that made me who I was. And I promised myself if I ever found it again, I'd never let it go. When a man loses everything, he begins to see what truly matters. Not the figures on a balance sheet, not the applause, not even the thrill of victory. What remains when the dust of ruin settles is the truth of who he really is. After my fall, I disappeared from the noise. No more headlines, no more ticker room whispers about Livermore's latest play. Just silence, and in that silence I began to hear again. For years the market had been speaking to me in a language I once understood, but I had drowned it out with arrogance, with the roar of my own self-importance. Now, stripped of everything, I sat in that quiet room with only my thoughts for company. The market wasn't punishing me anymore. It was inviting me to listen again. When a trader has nothing left, he has two choices: to curse the market or to learn from it. And I chose to learn. I remember those first mornings after ruin. The city felt different, colder, slower. I'd watch the brokers rush to their offices, the newsboys shout about stocks I once ruled over, and for the first time I didn't feel the pull to join them. It was as though I was watching my former self from a distance. I rented a small office, a single room with a window facing the street and a desk bare except for a ticker machine. No clerks, no assistants, no noise, just me and the tape, like the old days. That's where I began my reckoning. I studied my old journals again, page by page, line by line. I wasn't looking for new strategies, I was looking for me. Who was the man who wrote these words? What did he believe that I no longer did? Each rule I had once carved into my soul now felt like a forgotten prayer. Never average losses. Cut your losses quickly. Never argue with the markets. Simple truths, yet I had violated everyone. I realized something profound. The moment I stopped respecting my own rules, I stopped respecting the market itself. And when you lose respect for the market, it teaches you respect in the only language it knows: loss. I began to rebuild my mind before I rebuilt my fortune. Every day, I watched the tape for hours, not to trade, but to observe. I listened for the pulse, the rhythm I once heard. It came back slowly, faintly, like a melody you can almost recall from a distant memory. Patterns I had missed before began to appear again. Trends whispered their secrets. Reversals hinted at their intentions. It was as though the market was saying, "Welcome back, student. Are you ready to listen this time?" I no longer traded out of excitement. Excitement is poison to a trader. I waited, patient as a hawk, until the move was clear, until the tape spoke first. The difference was subtle, but everything. Before I traded because I wanted to be right. Now I traded only when the market told me I was right. That's the difference between gambling and mastery, between ruin and resurrection. As my discipline returned, so did my confidence. Not the loud confidence that boasts and shouts, but the quiet kind that listens, the kind that doesn't chase, the kind that waits. Every man in the market has two accounts, one for his money and one for his mind. Most men blow up the first because they ignore the second. So I made a new rule for myself. Before I risked $1, I had to earn it mentally. I had to be calm, patient, and detached. If I wasn't, I didn't trade. That single change saved me more money than any system ever could. But I'd be lying if I said it was easy. The ghosts of my former self haunted me. I'd see an opportunity and feel that old adrenaline rise, the hunger to jump, to prove, to win. And then I'd stop, because I knew where that hunger led. You see, the market doesn't just destroy accounts, it destroys egos. And once yours is gone, you can finally begin to see the truth. I began keeping a new kind of journal, one not of trades, but of thoughts. I wrote down every emotion I felt as I watched the market: impatience, greed, fear, hope, regret. I learned that those feelings were as much a part of trading as price action itself. The tape shows what the crowd is doing, and your heart shows what you're doing. And if those two aren't in harmony, the market will crush you. So I studied my own mind the way I used to study charts. I marked patterns in my emotions, when they rose, when they fell, what triggered them. And soon I could predict my weaknesses the way I once predicted market turns. That's when trading became something else, something deeper. It wasn't about making money anymore. It was about mastering myself, and I remember one particular day that changed me. The market was strong, trending upward with force. The tape screamed opportunity. The old me would have gone all in, chased the momentum, drowned in the thrill. But I didn't move. I waited. And sure enough, the surge faded. A false move, another trap for the impatient. The market had just tested me, and for once I had passed. I leaned back, smiled faintly, and whispered to myself, "You're learning, Jesse. Finally learning." There's a moment every trader must face, the moment when you realize the market doesn't owe you anything. It doesn't care about your losses, your dreams, or your plans, and it moves because it must. And you can either flow with it or fight it. The choice is yours, and most choose to fight. I used to, but the market is eternal and we are temporary. And once you accept that, trading stops being war, it becomes art. I began to trade again, slowly, carefully, not to rebuild my wealth, but to rebuild my relationship with the market. Each position was a conversation, not a conquest. Each stop-loss was a promise, not a punishment. Each win was gratitude, not glory. The profits came, modest at first, then larger. But this time, I wasn't chasing them. They came because I had earned them the right way, through patience, clarity, and discipline. You see, every man believes he wants to master the market. But what he really needs to master is his own human nature. And that was my reckoning. Not the loss of fortune, but the rediscovery of humility. The realization that no matter how far you rise, the market will always be bigger than you. That it's not the game that changes, it's the player. When I walked through Wall Street again after those dark years, the air felt different. The same buildings stood, the same faces rushed by, the same tickers hummed. But I saw it all with new eyes. Eyes that no longer burned with ambition, but gleamed with understanding. For the first time, I didn't want to conquer the market. I wanted to coexist with it. And that, my friend, is when I began to win again, not because I was smarter, not because I found some new secret, but because I had finally learned to listen, to the tape, to the crowd, to myself. The market didn't humble me to destroy me. It humbled me to rebuild me, to teach me that success is not the absence of loss, it's the wisdom to survive it. They say a man remembers his greatest victory, but that's not true. A man remembers his greatest defeat and what he learned crawling out of it. When I returned to the market, I was not the same Jesse Livermore who once commanded millions with a single order. I was quieter, older, sharper, not in strategy, but in soul. And the greatest irony, it wasn't my comeback trades that mattered most. It was the lesson my loss had carved into me, the lesson that would later save thousands of traders who studied my story. Let me tell you what that lesson was. It's not about timing, not about systems or signals or setups. It's not even about the market itself. It's about you. The market is the most ruthless mirror ever built. It reflects every weakness, every doubt, every undisciplined impulse you try to hide. And if you lie to yourself, even once, the market will expose it, magnify it, and make you pay for it. That's what broke me. And that's what saved me. See, I once believed that trading was about prediction. That if I could just read the tape well enough, I could outsmart the market, bend it to my will. But the market can't be bent, only understood. Every trend, every panic, every rally is a reflection of human emotion, fear, hope, greed, regret. They play out the same way they did in 1907, in 1929, and even today. Different tools, same souls. And so I realized something almost poetic. If I wanted to master the market, I had to master human nature. And the first human I had to conquer was me. That's the true secret most traders will never accept. Because it's easier to study charts than it is to study yourself. It's easier to add another indicator than to admit you're impatient. It's easier to blame the market than to face your own greed. But the moment you stop fighting your emotions and start understanding them, that's when you begin to trade like a professional, not a gambler. When I began teaching this idea informally to young traders who came seeking advice, I saw the same hunger I once had, the same spark. But I also saw the same blindness. They wanted shortcuts, systems, secrets, and I'd tell them the truth they didn't want to hear. There are no secrets, boys. Only lessons the market forces you to learn the hard way, if you're lucky enough to survive them. One of them asked me once, "Mr. Livermore, if you could give just one rule that would have saved you from your greatest loss, what would it be?" I thought about it long and hard, and I told him this: never risk your peace of mind for a profit. He frowned, confused. He wanted something technical, a stop-loss ratio, a formula, but I could see in his eyes that he didn't understand yet. So I told him what I'll tell you now. You can lose money and recover it. You can lose time and regain it. But once you lose your discipline or your inner calm, you've lost everything that matters in this game. Because the moment your emotions take control, your edge vanishes. The market senses it. It smells weakness. It devours you whole. That's why when I rebuilt myself, I stopped measuring success by profits. Instead, I measured it by control. Could I follow my rules? Could I stay patient when others panicked? Could I cut losses instantly without emotion or hesitation? That was victory to me. And here's the irony. When I stopped chasing the money, it started to come back. Because I was trading from clarity, not chaos. Discipline became my advantage, my invisible edge. It's funny, traders today believe they need data, AI, high-frequency tools. But if they could hear the ticker tape of the human heart, they'd realize it's always been the same rhythm. Boom, fear, greed, fall, regret, repeat. That's the real market cycle. The men who learn to step outside of it, who can observe that rhythm without becoming part of it, those are the few who last. You can teach a man how to read charts. You can teach him about price action, volume, accumulation, distribution, but you can't teach him character. That he must learn through loss. And maybe that's why my greatest loss became my greatest gift, because it stripped away every illusion, every ounce of ego, and left behind the only thing that mattered: truth. I started writing my principles down again, not as trading rules, but as life rules. They went something like this: be patient, be selective, respect your stops, control your emotions, never trade for excitement, and when in doubt, do nothing. Simple, almost boring. But behind each line was blood, pain, and the price of experience. I'd watch young traders laugh at these ideas, chasing every move, every shiny new system, and I'd smile, because I knew the market would teach them soon enough. It always does. If my story teaches you anything, let it be this: you don't need to make every trade, and you don't need to win every day. You only need to survive long enough to learn. Because survival in this game is victory. The ones who last, the ones who adapt, those are the true winners. And here's something most never understand until it's too late. You can only understand the market when you stop needing it, when you can look at it without craving a trade, when you can walk away without fear of missing out. That's when you're finally free. The market doesn't reward the man who's desperate. It rewards the man who's disciplined. When I finally returned to profit, slow, steady, deliberate, it wasn't triumph I felt. It was peace. Because I knew deep down, I'd found something rarer than riches. Balance. And that's what I want for you. Don't seek to conquer the market. Seek to understand it. Don't chase the thrill. Chase the truth. Don't aim to never lose. Aim to never lose yourself. The thousands who came after me, who studied my failures as much as my triumphs, they're the ones who carried my true legacy forward. Not the fortune I made, not the trades I placed, but the mindset that was born from ruin. A mindset that whispers to every trader who's ever faced despair, it's not over until you stop learning. If you've blown up your account, if you've failed, if you've watched everything slip away, good. You've just met the teacher that made me who I am. Now listen to it, learn from it, rebuild, slowly, quietly, patiently, because the greatest traders aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who know exactly how to rise, and when you finally rise again. Not out of greed, not out of pride, but out of understanding. You'll realize what I did, sitting in that silent office all those years ago. The market was never your enemy.